This was November 2020. February 2021, I called him. I said, I found this kid. We need to hire him. And he was like, are you serious? Because
I've been asking for this. But...
And then that created myriad problems because now he's out there. And he
so he went to Italy?
Yeah, he was there. He was already there.
So hi and welcome to another episode of the Recruiting Alchemy podcast with me, Andy Simpson. Today's episode, I'm joined by Craig Whiting, Managing Director at RLS Search. RLS Search are a recruitment agency or recruitment business focused on the global hedge fund space, placing technology people into the into the global hedge fund space. So I'm looking forward to hearing more about that in today's episode. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, it's good to be here. We always start every episode with the two beginnings. So the first is yours, a bit about your background, where you grew up, tells maybe some interesting stories. I'm sure there's a few.
Yeah.
And then I think what our listeners are generally interested in is the genesis story of your recruitment business. So how did it start? Why did it start? Was it a big leap? But we'll get onto that. But I guess to start us off, tell us a bit about the origin story of Craig Whiting.
I mean, it's quite boring.
You make it interesting.
It's the same as everyone else. So, yeah, I've sort of same route as everyone fell into recruitment.
No, go back a bit further. Where's home?
Home is Kent.
Right.
So I grew up near Rochester, Chatham sort of way, which was great. I mean, I was in a very small village outside of these kind of big chavvy towns, basically. Right. So yeah, sports, did a lot of boxing, very competitive, all that sort of stuff. All the sort of things that kind of tend to gravitate people towards sales type industries.
Competitive, hardworking.
Yeah, pretty much. Always was moderately intelligent, went to a half decent school, passed my 11 plus.
Right,
all this sort of stuff. So when I went away to uni, went to Cardiff, kind of experienced, living away from home and having to sort of fend for myself a little bit, which was good.
An eye-opener.
Well, it's just I was in that routine of like, I just ring my dad, the car won't start, ring my dad sort of thing. Right. So when you get in the mindset more of like, I need to go and buy some jump leads for when the car don't start when it's cold. I had this awesome like old secondhand Fiesta. It was brilliant. An old M-Reg, Mark II.
With an M at the front or M at the back?
There was...
probably an M at the front, I would imagine.
Yeah. I'm trying to think.
What are you thinking, that late 90s, early 2000s?
I don't know. I wouldn't know how to date it. I mean, it was very old. It was one of the old style. I bought some
Pride and Joy
fake leather seat covers.
Beautiful.
And an LED gear knob to put on the gear stick that would glow blue. Which was,
I mean, mate, you've made it.
I was just full on living life, mate. So yeah, uni, came back.
Just let me stop you. Like, at this point in your life, was there like a big idea? And maybe before then, let's say if you wind the clock back to say you're 15, did you have like a Hollywood vision of, did you want to be a rocket scientist, professional boxer?
No, I always knew that I wanted to earn money. Right. But I didn't know what that would look like or how I would do it, or I knew nothing. So my worldview was fairly, I grew up in a very normal, my dad's a builder. Right. My mum, we used to have a burger van, so my mum used to work on the burger van. Right. But my dad always had things going on. So like at one point he had like a sunbed business. Right. And we were told as kids, this is when the phone was attached to the wall. Yeah. You had to answer the phone saying Southeast Sunbeds. That was, so if someone rings, you answer with that, because he's a builder, but he's now moonlighting as a sunbed salesman. And then it was something else. So I don't know if some of that stuff bled in a little bit, but my friendship groups, my worldview was very much, my dad's a builder, my friend's dad is a window fitter, my other friend's dad is an electrician. And I didn't really have a comprehension, despite being so close to London, of like the world. Right. It just wasn't in my psyche. And pre-social media and the internet and stuff like that, like, I think if you can't see it,
Yeah.
you kind of don't really know,
Exists.
you know, that it exists and what's going on. So I always knew that I wanted to earn money. Didn't know how I would do that. Went to uni, kind of that sort of whole thing. Came out with a decent grade and good degree, and I was very lazy. So I fell into a job which was enterprise rent-a-car. That basically I had a friend who worked there who went, yes, brilliant management trainee program. He was getting a £500 referral. So he told me it was great. I joined. It wasn't so great. I left again, and was just on the job boards and applied to I was applying to sales jobs, applied to S3, not knowing what S3 was. One of their central recruiters kind of called me, put me in front of the brands, and then, you know, I kind of met Huxley guys and, you know, Lee Ballon and these people.
Icons, mate.
Obviously, then I met yourself, talking of icons.
Yeah.
You know, and then that was it. So it was sort of, there wasn't a vision, but I do remember looking at some of the guys so London to me was this whole new world. Getting a train into London in the morning was different. I didn't know anyone doing it. It was, you know, it was very alien. And then I saw that it was a vehicle. Now, right, this is a vehicle where I can earn this money thing that I've always known I kind of wanted.
Right.
So I took it really seriously. It wasn't just a job. It was like, right, this is going to get me to like where I feel like I need to go, sort of thing.
And you said you were lazy. So did the environment bring the best out in you? Would you say that actually it was the culture that you worked in that sort of gave you the impotence to work hard? Because you can't do well in recruitment without working hard.
I mean, I'm fundamentally not lazy, but at uni,
Right.
I was in a bubble where my life was like gym, rugby, get out on the piss.
Right.
Rinse and repeat every day.
Yeah.
And I mean, I didn't, you know, I got in a habit of like, I didn't go to lectures. I didn't take stuff seriously.
Yeah.
I just knew that I could I'm smart enough that I can revise for a week and get through and come out with a 2-1 and I'll be fine. Like I wasn't taking it seriously because I was just having a great time.
Yeah. So
So my laziness then was more, I didn't go to the job fairs. I didn't go and speak to companies. When all that stuff was happening, I was like, no, I'm going to go to the gym. So I didn't have an awareness coming in of, you know, like I was at Cardiff, so it was decent uni. PwC would come in, Deloitte would come in.
Yeah.
If I'd maybe sat and listened to some of those people, it would have given me a conception of what's out there. But I didn't. And then I had a mate going, come here, it's really good. And I thought, oh, great, that's a job. Like, that's kind of what I have to do now is go and get a job.
Yeah.
But my background, particularly in sports, and, you know, I grew up basically labouring for my dad on building sites, which is, you know, hard graft. And so work ethic, laziness was never an issue. It was more left to my own devices. I wanted to go and apply that work ethic in a gym, essentially.
got it.
So the environment at Huxley was quite militant. It was quite a tough environment. And that sort of faded a bit over the years, which I never really liked. I liked the original environment where a lot of the old guard were kind of there and running the show sort of thing.
Yeah.
And that really brought the best out of me because I think I have those traits, but I did need the external environment to walk into where like everyone was on it.
Got it.
And it was call times and core hours, and Lee was a really hard worker. That was, you know, he was a monster in the office in terms of just his rate of kind of turnover in terms of getting stuff done. So to learn from him, but also to have a benchmark of like, well, this is what you need to do sort of thing.
Yeah.
And everyone always says it, like Huxley and S3, a lot of people came and left.
Yeah.
But the people that stayed, a lot of them went on to run businesses or be very successful.
Yeah.
Because I think those core tenets of, you know, work ethic, perseverance, intelligence, get stuff done, that kind of mindset, those people, it really brought the best out of them.
Yeah. It's interesting because I, you know, it's nothing to do with me, but, you know, if you speak to those who are part of the founding team of that business, you know, whether that's Russell or Gary Eldon or others, you know, I think what they would say is that the culture was Marmite, and you either loved it or you hated it. But the people who loved it, they really fucking loved it. You know what I mean? It was, and I remember, I've told this story before, but I remember meeting a mate for lunch. I was like 30 years old, like a director of this company. And at 1:58, I was sprinting down King William Street to get back at my desk for 2 p.m. because if you were in at 2:01, you were dead.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And what I liked about it was it removed any element of like choice.
Yeah.
It was simple. It was a little bit military in the sense that you didn't have to think too much. It just was, it was very clear what was expected. There was no ambiguity. And it was reassuringly simple in a often complicated world, It was good for that.
Yeah.
And then so you joined a contracts team. Did you only ever do contract?
Yes, at Huxley.
Right, okay.
Only ever contract.
Only ever contract.
I wasn't allowed to do anything else.
That was it.
It was, like you say, it was very regimented, it was very controlled.
So contract, technology into banking, finance.
Yeah.
And how long were you with Huxley in total?
3 and a bit years.
3 and a bit years.
Yeah. So then I was headhunted to go into Stockton May, which was a very different environment and super laissez-faire, no central expectations.
Right.
Their MO was bringing in just really good billers.
Right.
And I think they sort of expected that
You just get on with it.
you'd be fine. So at the time, I think I was the top biller in Huxley, certainly in my team. I was doing really well and everything was good. They kind of approached me and I think Huxley was trying to push me into being more of a team leader and I didn't really want to do it.
Right. What, you just wanted to be...
Just wanted to bill. I just wanted to be left
wolf.
alone. Yeah. But basically, I just wanted to be left alone. I didn't want people to be over my shoulder. I didn't want to be responsible for anyone. I wanted to come in. So I had my daughter at that point. So the commute was fairly arduous. So I just wanted to come in, do my work, go home.
Right.
That was my thing. So I didn't really want all this extra... and then Stockton May were like, look, you can work from home a couple of days a week, which is like Huxley would never have happened.
Yeah.
And that was great. I never had a problem with KPIs, but they were like a no KPI environment, which I was kind of indifferent on.
Yeah.
It was more just, I think I didn't want to be this team lead and I was probably ready for a bit of a change. But I really struggled in that environment because I was 24. In hindsight,
You're still only 24 at this point.
Yeah.
So you're pretty young.
So going in, I think they thought that I was this really accomplished.
Yeah.
But for me going in without the controls of Huxley, so, my team at Huxley was all new business. I was really good at doing like new business.
Yeah.
We would win everything. So I didn't need key accounts. It wasn't a client thing. It was more I wasn't mature enough to, with the shackles taken off after 3 years of having the shackles on, I defaulted into just that, almost that uni collegiate mindset a little bit, because you to your point of like sprinting down King William Street to get back to the office, this was go to the gym at lunch, take as long as you want.
Yeah.
And I just didn't have the maturity, I don't think.
And it's crazy that you don't know how much you need that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You think, and people moan about it or did moan about it, but it's essential, and it's because it's not like it's not tangible. You can't really articulate what it is, but it was like a self-managing culture, right? So I remember like if all the managers were away for the day, lunch was still 1 till 2, not a minute before, not a minute after. Self-policing, and I always thought to myself, that's the sign of a great culture, is when nobody is monitoring what's going on, all of the things that are supposed to happen still happen. And I also remember trying, and if I'm completely honest, failing to recreate that in my first recruitment company, and realizing how special is maybe not the right word, but how it's not easy to create a culture like that operates in that way. But I never ever underestimate how important that was, because I think you're right. When people leave and they hate all that crap, right? Oh, but then they go somewhere else and they realize it's no better. It's not that better anywhere else.
Yeah, I mean, there were people at Start May that were really good and did well, but they were older.
Yeah.
They were like early 30s.
Yeah.
I think my issue was lack of maturity.
Right.
Just, and it was a bit too easy. It was a bit too, and I came in sort of feeling like, yeah, I know how to do this now.
Yeah.
And I was still all right.
Yeah.
I was probably billing $250,000 a year or something, which I guess industry standards is not bad. But for me, it was like, it was a bit of a kick in the nuts. And then I did get into that habit of blaming everyone else.
Right.
Oh, they've got an easy market. All this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But it's interesting you say about trying to recreate it. So like with RLS, we had a 6-year period where it was just myself and Dan sort of just bidding, both working remotely, and we didn't have anything else to worry about. And it was almost back to that Huxley model of like, just get your head down and smash it, which is the thing I wanted to keep. And then when we started hiring people in 2021, I really wanted to create that S3 style environment, but it just didn't work. Like for whatever reason, maybe because we're in Devon, maybe because the world's moved on, I don't know, but it just didn't work. And actually we've got to that self-policing model where I know if I'm not there, I know that the stuff's getting done that needs to get done. But our model is so much more like, we don't really monitor anything because we've kind of just got really good people.
Well, let's come back to that, because I really want to. Our listeners are interested in how you build a recruitment business, and there's so many ways to do it. And I think your model is super interesting. But just take us back a little bit. Before you started RLS, did you always know you would start your own company one day?
Not quantitatively, no. I was never the guy walking around going, I'm going to run my own business.
Yeah.
Intrinsically, probably yes.
Right.
It was always likely to be the destination, but it was more of a pull rather than me driving to it. It was, I would think it was just in me.
Yeah.
But the actual kind of genesis of it was very, it wasn't a grand plan. So basically, the brutal truth of it is, I was sick and tired of going to London every day.
Yeah.
And
because you were still living in Kent at this point.
Yeah.
You'd gone back from Cardiff to Kent.
Yeah, so I went back to Kent. So my now wife, met her at the end of my second year of uni.
Right.
So my last year of uni was traveling back and forward between Cardiff and Kent to see Jess. The big sell for me of Huxley was because I didn't know I couldn't tell the difference between, Madison Black and Huxley and Real, because they all said the same things.
Yeah,
and, the only difference was,
don't we all?
Huxley was saying, we're gonna work you like a dog.
Right.
Like that was balanced pitch, but you'll be successful.
Yeah.
The other guys were saying, we go out on a Thursday night, we're in the pub, we're doing all this. And I was like, well, I've just had a year of not seeing Jess. I just want to go home every night. I don't want to go out.
Yeah.
And obviously everyone was in the Red Line on a Thursday night anyway at Huxley. It's not like that didn't exist, but that was the sole reason why I took that job. And then I had Rosie really young. So I had Rosie at 22. And then when I went to start May, very shortly afterwards, we had Frank, my second kid. And now I was getting a coach into work, and with traffic, sometimes I'd leave the house at 5:30, but sometimes I wouldn't get until 9 o'clock at night and just sat in traffic all day. And
And you did that for years.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, well, we weren't going to move. So, we weren't going to move into London.
Right.
And I just got fed up with it. And I started to resent the job.
Right.
Because I just saw it as, I never see my kids.
Yeah.
So for me, it was, I want to go home and I want to stay home. I don't want to leave.
Yeah.
What's the point of me doing that? I could try and negotiate with a company to work remotely full time. But if I'm going to do that, they're going to want me to do new business and blah, blah, blah. Why don't I just do it myself?
And can you pinpoint, was there a moment, a coffee, a lunch, a conversation with your business partner where you remember the business was created?
Well, Dan was going to do it anyway,
right?
With or without me,
right?
It wasn't again, very organic. Dan's a very like just we've made a decision, very strong-minded, very he's really good as well. So he was like, look, I'm doing this,
right?
But we worked very well together, and we were really good friends. And we worked together for 3 years at the start of May, and we'd had good success. We won lots of clients, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And he was like, look, I'm doing it. And I was like, well, I want to be at home. I don't want an office. I don't want nothing. I just want to bill. And he was living in Suffolk at the time. I was in Kent. And he was like, look, works for me.
Yeah.
So it was real. I don't want to I'd love to have some really insightful stuff, but it was real back of a fag packet. Yeah. What's the worst case scenario? I'll just go and get a job in recruitment.
And I think that's the thing. That was certainly my point of view, was if this all goes tits up, I'll just go and get a job.
Yeah.
And I always remember my dad was an engineer and he was made redundant 4 times. And I remember thinking, like, the great thing about being a good salesperson is I'll never be out of work.
Yeah.
Because there's always somebody that will want me to come in and do a job. So therefore, the perceived risk is so much lower because apart from a bruised ego, what's the worst that's going to happen? So you're living in Kent, your business partner's living in Suffolk, you start RLS Search, you're doing what you've always known, technologists into hedge funds or into finance. Good start?
Yeah, really good. Yeah, we made the beginning was like, we'll just work anything we can get our hands on.
Right.
But all of our networks were, in the trading world. So it kind of was more fertile ground. And we picked up, a couple of firms quite quickly, private equity companies, this sort of thing, did a couple of deals, got the ball rolling. And then we won a client, which is still our biggest client now, 10 years later. Right. And picked up a job, it was a real drop everything, work however many hours you need to work. But the hedge fund, the fee values are massive. Mm. So that went in, it was a big placement. So it's like, right, pressure's off now, money's good for a year. Yeah. My mortgage is fine. So now we can focus on really doing a good job. Yeah. Then Dan had, there's a guy that he used to work with that had gone into a consultancy and they needed like an MD type person to come in. Mm-hmm. And I knew a guy that would be great for it. So placed him very shortly afterwards. It was another really big fee.
Right.
And then it was like, we're rolling. Mm. And we got in this model of, we had no costs. We were using
a CRM?
Nope.
Nothing.
We were using the basic LinkedIn,
right,
which was 70 quid a month, and our mobiles. We would get up in the morning, call each other, voice call, and just leave the line open. And I would just sit and work, and he would sit and work. Because headhunting, you're not on the phone all the time. You're
sending
messages, like deep mining and LinkedIn and all this sort of thing. And then I'd be like, all right, I've got to call someone now. So I'd go and call them, and then I'd call Dan back, and we'd leave the line open again. And we just work, and then we'd maybe chat for 10 minutes, then we just work again. And we basically did that for 6 years. And we ended up winning, all these clients came to us because we had a really good reputation. And, there was, people asked me about business stuff. I was like, there was no plan. We had no CRM, we had no nothing. We were just making so much money and doing such a good job. And for me, Dan was a bit different. Like Dan always wanted a business and people and everything else. And I was so anti any sort of anchor of an office or people that I was responsible for, commitment, obligation, because I'd got to such a low point of just resenting work so much that I was like, no, I'm going to sit in my house and I'm going to recruit and I'm not doing anything else. I'm going to take my kids to school. I'm going to be happy for however long it takes. And then my youngest went to school and then it was like, okay, now I can do something else.
Are you like a natural lone wolf? Are you an introvert? No? Because there's a thread, isn't there, of like, I just want to be left alone. I just want to I just want to get on with it. Stop fucking doing my head in with this stuff. I just want to get on with it. Is that part of you?
So I say this is a conversation that I would have with my wife fairly often. If I care about someone or something, I'm all in. So I'll do anything for that person, and I'm 100% engaged in what I'm doing. If I don't care about it, I'm not a tolerant, compromising.
Right.
I'm not interested.
Got it. Okay.
And at that point, I only wanted to be a dad. Really, right. That was it. I didn't want to do anything else. And I don't know if that was just how I was, but I always met these guys at work, like at Stop May, and they'd always moan, like they'd always want to be out of the house. They'd always want to go away. They want to be away from their kids, away from their missus. They'd always moan about them. And I was like, I don't understand. I just want to, I'm the opposite. But I didn't have it because I was commuting and all this sort of stuff, and I didn't really see them very much. I didn't like it.
Yeah.
So because I had that thing of like, I don't want to do any of that.
Yeah.
I'm not doing it. I don't take kindly to people telling me what to do unless I really value if I know that they know more than me about what they're talking about, I love learning.
Yeah.
But equally, I don't like people going, what's going on at the moment?
Right.
What are you doing? What's this? I'm much more of I know what I need to do. Give me the rules and I'll hit targets. But like, I don't want to be managed, micromanaged. I don't like that. And at that time, I didn't want, whereas Dan wanted an office. He wanted people.
So you've got a business, you're making tons of cash. The temptation, obviously, is always to think, well, if we hire people, we'll make more money, right? It must be hard to resist that, irrespective of you said 6 years, right? It must be hard to resist the temptation to go and just hire people and, you know.
It wasn't, because what we do, and at the end of the day, we're headhunters.
Yeah.
We're not reinventing the wheel, but what we do is so complex in terms of the level of people we have to deal with and the knowledge that we have to have. We have to understand financial products. We have to understand technology. We have to understand hedge funds. We have to understand how to present these things to candidates. We have to operate on a level that these people are at, which requires huge investment of learning. And I still now do so much in terms of trying to be on top of this industry. And I think that's probably the biggest reason why I've been so successful. Like, my goal was always, I want every person I speak to come off saying that's the best recruiter I've ever spoke to, based on their knowledge.
Got it.
And it really helps in closing deals, because we don't sell. We're not salespeople. I don't see us as salespeople. We just highlight facts and assess the fit, and we're brokers. And I was concerned that to try and get people to the level of the clients that we've got will be next to impossible.
Right.
In a small, or it would take such a long time.
Right.
So I never had that temptation. Dan was the opposite. Dan wanted an office. He wanted people. And the irony of the whole thing is 2020, end of 2020, he said, look, are we ever going to have an office? I said, no, I'm not doing it. If you want an office, you lose me, basically. And he said, okay, well, I'm going to go and live in Italy then, because I can work from there. It's only an hour ahead. I'm sat in between the same four walls all day. So I'm going to Italy. And I was like, yeah, go. Like, I'll come and see you. Good for you. This was November 2020. February 2021, I called him. I said, I found this kid. We need to hire him. And he was like, are you serious? Because
I've been asking for this.
And then that created myriad problems. Because now he's out there, and
so he went to Italy?
Yeah, he was there. He was already there, and he was like, right, well, I can't come back because I've just bought this place, and now I've got to try and work out how to do all the things that I've wanted to do for ages remotely, and then you're stuck with these people, but you don't really want to deal with them, and it was, there's never, I'd say only this year we've actually started taking it seriously, which is a ridiculous thing to say, but
I think that's quite nice, right? Like you read, like, maybe reading books is the wrong word, but like people go, you need a business plan. I'm like, do I? I've never written a business plan in my life. Actually, that's a lie. When I'm raising money, you have to write a business plan. But again, total nonsense.
Yeah.
It's like just complete fabrication of reality. Or let me just imagine, tell me a story about something that might happen in the future in an alternate reality. So COVID happened. You're still just a two-man band printing cash, basically. you get through COVID.
Didn't affect us.
Didn't affect you
at all.
I don't really know what hedge fund is, right? So maybe you'll explain to me in a minute. But I would imagine volatility in the market, unknown. Hedge funds are probably cleaning up, right?
Yeah. I mean, they make money regardless.
Yeah.
There was a period where a lot of those guys went fully remote really early because they were worried. When COVID was like, we don't know what it is. If one portfolio manager goes down and then they take out a trading floor, all the PMs go down.
Right.
We got major problems. So very quickly, they were like, we've just fully remoted our business.
Right.
And we were like, okay, fine. And it was, everything's on hold until we've worked out what we're doing.
Yeah.
So there was a period of a couple of weeks where it's like, we don't know where the jobs are coming from.
Yeah.
But we weren't worried because we'd had a really big run of doing big deals and a lot of them. So it wasn't like,
So you had cash in the bank.
Yeah, it wasn't like so I built a climbing frame for 2 weeks for the kids.
Yeah.
Which I loved. I would kind of go out early in the morning. I don't even remember at the beginning of COVID, or in March time, we had this weird heat wave. Or it was very nice, it was really nice weather. It certainly was in Devon. So I was out in the sun every day. I was building this climbing frame. The wife was bringing me a bacon sandwich and a cup of tea and looking at me like I'm a real man all of a sudden. So,
yeah.
I loved it. That
yeah.
2 weeks was just a break. It was nice. And then they then kind of worked out what they were doing and they were like, look, the business is remote. We have a new operating model. Everyone knows what they're doing now. By the way, we still need to hire all these people.
Yeah.
Nothing's changed. Off you go.
Right.
And then we rode that through till when it all went crazy in 22. But then in the fund world, it really went crazy. So they're paying now like double what they were paying 2 years before in comp for people. And we bill on total comp. So we bill on the bonuses. So we're placing people now that we were placing before at 350, 400K packages. And they're now on 800K packages.
Wow.
In the 22. And then, SVB and everything else happened, the market pulled back. Some funds were very exposed and they started shelling people, but our clients are not massively, they're not big risky firms. Like they manage their risk very, very tightly and the way that they trade, and they run very decentralized models. So if one desk is in a losing position, they can pull the money and put it in a desk that's making money, and they never make stupid returns, but then they never really lose anything either.
Sorry, just to cut in, just for the layman out there.
Yeah.
SVB is Silicon Valley Bank?
Yes.
So that was a fairly significant corporate failure, probably the most significant corporate failure in the last 5 years, 10 years. Yeah. What impact did that have on kind of the, on the broader market?
So there were a lot of, obviously Credit Suisse were very exposed.
Because there was Credit Suisse were essentially insolvent, right, for a period.
So UBS were forced to buy them by the Swiss government for for pennies on the dollar.
Right.
So
is that brand gone now?
Credit Suisse are there in administration effectively, but I think what's happening at the moment is there's a big rationalization on the UBS side of how do we assimilate all these people, who are we going to get rid of?
Right.
Bonuses are like nondescript, etc. Good people are kind of won out. I guess what happened, so there was SVB, Credit Suisse for very high level. General terms, like VC sentiment started to dry up a little bit. The confidence was sucked out of the market. So there was a lot less investment, generally speaking. There was a lot of other companies that started to struggle, particularly crypto firms. Some funds had they built digital asset desks that then they pulled back from. Some very high profile, they just pulled everything and fired everyone, and then there was also just, I think what a lot of funds had done is they'd massively overhired in 2022 in the boom, and then realized we haven't scaled from an AUM or a capitalization perspective as quickly as we've scaled in headcount. And then they very quickly descaled down, and now they're starting to scale back up again, but at more of a normal pace. But we were really insulated from that. Like none of it affected us in any way. Our clients are, I'd love to say there's a grand plan, but there wasn't. It was more just, we have moved, our clients are they manage their risk very tightly. But also, I guess we've worked with a couple of firms that were really, really sort of wide open to risk. But they tend to have a really wide open attitude towards how they engage agencies as well. And they want a bit more of a CV service, which we don't do. So we've kind of said, look, we're not going to work with you anymore. And we've cancelled the terms. So yeah, we were, you know, again, I'd love to have like the real peaks and valleys story, but my biggest challenge in since February 21, since we started hiring, you can broadly categorize my career as Huxley was brilliant and I was great. And I loved it. And especially in, you know, hindsight, I look back and so much fondness for that environment. Stott and May, I was average, but I kind of learned a lot from it by being average, and I can look at the traps that I fell into and identify what happened. The first 6 years of RLS, I was the best I've ever been because I had everything I ever wanted. I was just at home all day with my kids and I was making loads of money. And then since 21, since we hired people, it's been really painful and really challenging and really tough, very, very tough. Probably the toughest in my experience. And we've now come out the other side of that. And I think certainly this year has been a very transformative year for us. And we're now in a really good space and I'm really excited about it. And my mindset has shifted where I get real joy from seeing the team do really well. But I also get really excited by the challenges of now running a business, and I'm starting to think in business terms and strategic terms, and we're talking about things like, you know, vision and all this sort of stuff, and then trying to make it happen. Whereas before it was like, what jobs have we got? Right, let's fill them, and then we'll get some more, and then I'm going to go on holiday, basically.
So you've discovered this guy, whoever he is. It's March 2021. Dan's in Italy.
Yeah.
Who is this guy, and how did he have such a profound impact on your outlook?
He didn't have a profound impact.
Is he still with you?
Yeah. He's great. Yeah, he's. I think he'll be out of the team. He'll be the top biller this year.
Right.
He's doing really big numbers.
Okay.
He's really good. I met him at the gym. We were all there of an evening to watch the rugby, and I was sat next to him. We got into a chat. He was 19. And broadly knew him, but only in a passing sort of context.
This is in Devon where you've moved to,
This is in
right?
Devon, yeah. So
like the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, so it's all farmers and, you know,
right.
There's not much about.
So the hedge fund recruitment game's pretty
slim.
Yeah.
So we got chatting. He said, like, I'm due to go to uni, but it's been deferred because of COVID. So I was meant to go at the end of last year. I'm going now in September. I don't really want to go, but like, there's nothing here for me. I don't want to be a farmer. I don't want to work in tourism. I want to and he was smart, switched on. And he was working in a petrol garage that his family owned, but he'd been furloughed. So he's like, I'm just sat at home. So I was like, what are you doing? He said, well, I've just put myself through.
Petrol stations were furloughing people.
Yeah.
Surely I guess we weren't driving to work, were we?
Yeah. Maybe. So he said, I've just put myself through this course to learn how to invest. So he's like, I'm learning how to invest in the markets. I was like, oh, that's quite interesting. Are you interested in the markets? And it sort of transpired. He had a bit of an interest, but he's also interested in money. And I kind of said, look, we've got loads of work at the moment. So we had just won a project to basically scale out a hedge fund in Poland. And it was like 200 heads, but Poland's a bit more transactional than what we're used to. And it was sort of like, well, I could kind of probably bring someone in, give him a crash course in Polish diplomacy and also technology. And probably he would do all right. So I kind of said, look, why don't you come in for a few months? We won't pay you anything, but we'll give you big commission. You've got your furlough money. You don't need any money. Do it for a few months, then go off to uni. But if you do a couple of deals, you'll make, you know, probably make 20 grand, 25 grand, something like that. His eyes like lit up. So he used to come to the house for an hour in the morning. We'd do a training session. Then he'd go to his house and I'd ignore him for most of the day. So I'd just see him ringing me and just, I can't be bothered. So he had a really rough landing, which was like he'd get trained and then he'd get told what he had to do. And it was like, right, this is how you do it. Now go and do it, report back. And I think he did like 3 deals in 2 months. And then he went, I don't want to go to uni. I want to do this.
Right, okay.
So then he said, I'm 19, and I'm looking at 4 walls all day. I need some social. I need to sit in an office with you. And I was like, well, if we're going to do that, I might as well get some more. So I got a couple of other guys that I knew from the gym. And then they were good, but they're not with us anymore. So one of them went to do something else, and then one of them moved away.
Right.
But they were good, and it sort of proved the concept a little bit.
Right.
And then it was like, okay, let's actually start to try and work out how to do this.
How to grow this thing.
In a way that makes sense.
Okay. But at this point, your mindset has shifted a bit. You're thinking, right, we can do this now. Or are you still doing still doing it through gritted teeth?
I was a bit of a dick, yeah. I tried to apply a Huxley mindset to it. I tried to create a mini Huxley.
Right. Hard graft.
Yeah, and I tried to apply, right, I'm going to be Lee.
Right.
And they're going to watch me and do what I did, which is they're going to soak it up, they're going to learn, they're going to replicate.
Yeah.
And it didn't really work. We had really high turnover of people.
This is in Devon as well.
Yeah, so I mean,
it's like a slightly, well, it's definitely a smaller labour pool, but are you finding it's hard to find talent down there?
No, because we're like a really big fish in a small pond because there's not much work around.
Yeah.
So we would always get people coming in because we'd be talking about, so basically this kid, Will, I think he earned in his first year, I think he earned like 97 grand, something like that.
He's like the king of Devon.
So he's now just walking around Devon with just these massive balls, basically, swaggering around. But the word was getting out a little bit. But then we were marketing ourselves as like, well, that's what he did.
Yeah.
And you can go and talk to him.
Yeah,
like we're not you'll earn 100 grand in the first year, all that bullshit. We were like, look, you nearly will. He works really hard, but go and have a chat. And I was like, none of this is BS. So we get loads of people that wanted to come in, but they all say the right things. And then the reality is some of them just were bad hires. They weren't great. Some of them needed more. They needed less of the hard line. And I, at the time, didn't have the interest in giving someone a different way of learning. So we had quite high turnover, but we did develop this core team, which we've still got now, of 4 consultants who are really, really good. They're all billing really big money.
Yeah.
They're super capable. And then this year it shifted where we kind of said, look, our UK office, so we do 2 days a week in the office.
And where's the office?
Devon. We're very close. It's like a family. We are super, super tight. And everyone works really well together. I kind of said, look, I'm not going to bring anyone else into that office because I don't want to upset the apple cart. I like it how it is and I get the best out of them. So we started looking at now bringing in a couple of senior people in the UK on a remote model. And we've got a method that I think would be quite compelling for people coming in. But also we've really started growing in South Africa. So we've been hiring lots of people out there. Then they've been feeding into our kind of established consultants in the UK.
Yeah.
And we're sort of growing up that way now, but with much more of a plan and, an idea of what we're trying to do.
So I'd love to talk about that actually, because I think a lot of people I speak to are interested in offshoring, outshoring, nearshoring, whatever you want to call it, right? But they don't really know where to start. So should it be South Africa? Should we do Poland? Should we do the Philippines? How did that all start for you? Why did it all start for you? And how? And what have you learned what have you learned along the way?
So it started because we got to a point where I think there's been, like, in all honesty, the last few years, there's been a lot of friction between myself and Dan because he's been wanting to grow and he was getting a bit fed up with the day-to-day recruitment. He's a bit older than me. He's been in it longer. He's like, look, I don't want to work jobs anymore.
Yeah.
And I'm always like, yeah, but there's like 6 of us.
Yeah.
So it doesn't justify doing anything else. And there's been a bit of friction where I've been quite happy to just bill for the last few years and train and, help the guys out. So there's been a bit of friction. And then this year we've kind of got through that, I think. And now we started looking at it going, well, hold on a minute. We've actually got really good people here now who don't need much from me anymore. They're very capable. The clients love them. They bill lots of money. They're happy. How do we actually now take this further to create more onward opportunity for these guys? Because they're probably not going to get, they're also not recruitment weirdos like me that just like doing recruitment. How do we create this trajectory for them that they can see that there is all the opportunity that one might get in a London company, but they can have it in Devon and they can have it where they want to live and all the rest of it. We didn't want to hire in the UK anymore on the basis that it's going to be very difficult to get people to move down to Devon, and there's not a great pool of talent around.
Yeah.
And also from a financial perspective, the costs now in terms of the salaries that people are looking for, I find that some without stereotyping too much, but some people in the UK they don't have that work ethic anymore. We've really struggled to find people that really just want to get after it. And then all the associated kind of, tax costs and everything else. So we started thinking, well, how could we do it where we could actually scale without compromising on the location? And we looked at a fully remote, let's hire some people in the UK, but I have mixed feelings on senior people coming in. I don't think that solves many problems and people come with bad habits. But also we were like, well, if we're gonna default to a remote route, is there not a better way to do it? So we started looking around and we looked at South Africa. We chose South Africa because firstly, they're an hour ahead predominantly. So time zones broadly align. Secondly, they speak English as a first language. So for us to present, it's not uncommon if you're a hedge fund person to encounter a South African in London.
Yeah.
So we can present these people as if they're in London, and it's not going to raise any red flags. English is the first language. We've got the time zone. And what we've learned in our experience there is the people there are exceptionally good, but they're also exceptionally motivated. They've got real work ethic. They appreciate the opportunity. They're in an environment where they're battling things like daily blackouts. They're used to, they're used to discomfort. They're used to overcoming kind of struggle as just part of day-to-day life. This is even in Cape Town. But we also, the second thing that's happened this year, particularly from a personal perspective, is I've started to realize that there are things that I'm really good at that seem to be centered around this recruitment stuff. And then there's all these other things that are needed that I'm really not very good at. And I used to try and control and be involved in everything. And this year I've stepped out of anything that I can't really add any value in and put all my time into just recruiting and helping people and training people and talking to clients and growing the business and winning business, all this stuff. And Dan has now taken on everything else, which he really wants to do and he's really good at, and he's much better at it than me. And then we said really early, like we need to hire someone in South Africa who can look after it day to day, that actually knows what they're doing.
Like operations.
Yeah. So we brought in a lady that used to run the South African business for Harley Davidson. So she had a big team. She's very good at marketing. She's very good at operational integrity, structure. She's like a country manager type thing. And then we've really invested and started using technology. So we use video a huge amount. We use Loom to record all of our training material, which is basically me on a screen share, like narrating, this is how you do this, this is how you do that, this is how you strip CVs, this is how you learn, this is how you build knowledge. And then doing lots of almost like a boot camp style environment where it's very regimented. So it's a bit of a Huxley.
Yeah.
In a sense of day one, you do this, you learn this. Day two, you do this. And we've got the whole month is iterated in days of like this learning program. And then the guys will feed into a UK recruiter who then they're like steer and point at a role.
Right.
So it's sort of the team lead type role. But it's more horsepower. And our whole thing is, we also have a team in Pakistan now that build out all this kind of tech stuff for us. So we use this business process management tool called Clay, and it sort of orchestrates everything. But we're doing some stuff now that I'm really excited about, like going into clients and running like really large scale analytics across their people in technology and building avatars based on part of the business. So our team in Pakistan can run this analytics, say on anyone that's aligned to the front office equities business in tech at X company. And they can build an avatar of this is the minimum standard of education. These are by percentage, the majority universities that people have come from. This is by percentage, the industry background and the average tenure and the skills necessary in that world. So we can map what environments and clients look like without ever speaking to them. And then we can build templates of candidates, and we can condense very, very tight searches and use kind of like nurture funnels essentially to go to these individuals and say, look, we've identified clients that would be a fit for you based on from a quantitative perspective in terms of your academics and this, like you being good company. This is the template. Let's have a chat when the time comes that you want to look at the market to really understand from more of a qualitative perspective, like what does a good environment look like for you? Because we'll have the options. So all these candidates are inbound to us saying, hey, like, you know, and we can warm that up through automation, but very like, we're not pitching people jobs. We're just saying like, if and when the time comes, talk to us. So we're trying to use tech to put the human at the forefront of the process because our humans are really good. And then we're going to clients saying, look, we've built all this against your firm. So we know that this is a candidate you would hire in this team.
Right.
So you can choose to work with us or not, understand PSLs, blah, blah, blah. There's a review at some point, like don't really give a shit. When the time comes that you want to work with a true partner, pick the phone up.
Right.
And they're so receptive to it.
Really?
So we can go in and then as a result, our metrics, and I saw a podcast you did with Sam. Talking about how a lot of recruitment companies are in the model where they think more is more CVs, more interviews. We're the opposite. Our job is save the client time. Give them less CVs that are higher quality, so they have to do less interviews. Manage the candidates properly so people don't take counter offers. Pull people out of the process as soon as there's a lack of alignment between company and individual based on under the hood needs as opposed to high level, you know, just nuts and bolts. And our ratios have come right down in terms of our CV to interview to offer. We're getting closer and closer and closer to like what I think is the promised land, which is like 1 to 1 to 1. And we've hit it quite a few times where the guys now are saying that person will get, it happened the other week. We just did a 65K deal in London and we sent one profile and it was a member of my team. She's got 2.5 years experience. She spoke to the guy and she went, that guy will get the job.
Right.
And that was it. Stop working the job. Invest your time elsewhere. So we've got a really good platform now that works and it's integrated. So the tail is wagging the dog and vice versa. Tech is supporting the consultants and then the consultants will feed stuff back to tech and the tech guys will build more. And then South Africa is really providing the horsepower.
Right.
So like inbound stuff, they go to South Africa first, high level kind of screens. So our UK guys they're just being loaded up with like these avatars that we already know they're right for our clients before we even look for them. And then it's less about trying to find candidates to send CVs and more about trying to find people for whom our clients, because hedge funds are different, very different culturally from shop to shop. So we're working with people going, what would be the environment that's really going to get the best out of you and really going to motivate you and allow you to do the things you want to do from a progression perspective, from a flexibility perspective, from a money perspective, because everyone's different. And then it's so compelling to go to a client and just say, look, here's all the work we've done. This is someone that you're going to want to hire.
And all of this energy and effort that's going into, you could call it like a pre-sales, right? You know, you're basically front loading the work in the hope that the customer will choose to work with you. You clearly believe that that's the way forward. You put the effort in first and then the customer will respond and reciprocate. Are you clear now that that's the way forward for your business? You clearly are.
Yeah. For us,
passionate about it. So
recruitment to me, it's not broken, but from what I see, the majority of agencies work the same way that I worked in 2008, which is get a job, go to market, get as many people as you can, make some rudimentary decision on who you think are applicable based on no real knowledge of what you actually recruit for, send them, hope for the best.
Right.
That seems to me how most people do it. And I might be wrong, but everyone is in that trap of, we'll just send more CVs. I think, and I have the luxury of having very niche clients with very high demands. So maybe if you work with very transactional clients, you'd need that sort of model.
Yeah.
But the people I talk to, they talk about, we don't care if you work for a big agency or a small agency. We care about the individual that we're dealing with. We want to work with one person. We want that person to understand what's important to us in our hiring, because it's very time consuming. And I saw PwC did a study last year of Fortune 500 CEOs, and 93% of them listed talent acquisition as their number one challenge. This is Fortune 500 firms. Of all the challenges they could have, TA is the biggest issue. And when you get under the hood of it with clients, it takes too much time. It's too much time to get the right person in the door. It's too many CVs, and then there's too many dropouts. There's too many counter offers. So my opinion of it for agencies to be successful is the less you can focus on, we need to do deals above all things, and we need to send CVs, and here's your KPIs, and you have to do it like this. The more you can get into, try and understand the market that you recruit in, because you present yourself as a specialist, but you don't know anything about it. If you recruit in financial services, understand the business, understand why companies hire these people, understand what they do. Like, why would someone pay a lot of money for this person? What's the value that they add? And then start to talk to people about, what are the differences between a bank and a hedge fund? What's the differences between working for Amazon or Meta and working in financial services? What do these companies look like under the hood? Culturally, what sort of opportunity moving forward is available? What does it do for individuals? Because you can start to get into, because now we're predominantly perm in our recruitment. We still do some contract work, but we're getting into like, well, what's actually a good environment for you? What is a good job for you? Not is just, well, what's a good job for us to make some money?
Yeah.
And we've become partners with the business that we work with. We're involved in, one firm is currently headcount planning for 2026, and we're in those conversations.
Right.
We're seen as an extension of their brand. We're seen as a partner. And the net result for us is we don't do any new business, ever. Right. We've never done it. It's all inbound, it's all referrals, and we endlessly prioritize doing a good job. And what I'm looking at now, and where my head is I don't think, with all the AI and the automation and everything else, I think that's going to push the human to the forefront of the business, because no one's ever sat on the phone to a bank talking to a human trying to solve a problem and said, can you put the automated voice robot back on, please? When it comes to things that are important, when we're years away from trusting AI. And when you go to job moves, particularly perm jobs, particularly headhunting, these are very deeply personal decisions. They're not motivated by money. It's like if you're buying a house, if your budget for a house is $1 million and someone turns up and goes, here's a house and it's 990 grand. You're not just going to buy it because the money fits. You buy it on feel. You buy it on under the hood qualitative needs, and they'll be different from you to someone else who wants to buy a house. It's the same with jobs. Every job's different. Every company's different. Every person's different in terms of the environment that they want. Me and Dan, I didn't want people. He did. We're in the same business. Yeah. We want different things, and it causes friction, and we've realigned really well on that. But I think that all this tech is going to put the human to the front of it. So how do you use the tech? Not to just wrap people up in a web of 10,000 spam emails and hope someone comes back. Yeah. But to really find ways to add value to your clients and to individuals and present something that's more reasoned. It's more thought out. It's more bespoke, but it isn't bespoke because you can use the tech to bootstrap it and to give you more reach. Yeah. And then using things like South Africa as a vehicle to go, well, how can we do more, but spend less and get a better quality of person and still create great opportunities for those people. I think we do a very good job of that. the numbers suggest that we do. The client, the ratios suggest that it works as well. And that's kind of where the excitement comes from, because it's now there is a way, and it does work, and it's taken some getting to, but I think we're in a great position. And I think with GPT, and I love Perplexity, so I don't use GPT, I'm a Perplexity guy. There's so many barriers that are gone now for the individual recruiter and for the business owner who's trying to look at, how do I power up my teams? There's so many tools and there's so few barriers. And it's about, just for us, understanding our marketplace and going, well, what's the best way that we can add the most value to the people that we recruit for, and the people that are our stakeholders, our candidates. And then the flip side of that is, how do we create the best possible opportunity for our team? Because if we can do those things, then, I think we're on a really good trajectory.
Amazing. And what's your outlook for the next few years? We've obviously had 2 elections this year, one in the UK, one in the USA. We got, one outcome we expected, one that we probably didn't. What do you see, if you wind the movie forward 2-3 years, where do you see your business, but where do you see the broader market going? And I mean, when I say broader market, I'm talking about the broader recruitment industry.
I think that what we're seeing at the moment, from a labour market perspective, holistically, and from what I hear and the people that I talk to, that we're entering very much a dual economy, where there's a centralisation of demand. This is within the tech world, so I can't talk for how companies in non-technical, roles are behaving. But I know that there are huge redundancies happening. So to give you an example, I spoke to a guy at a bank the other day. They run an operational risk department of 700 people, and they've just fired 550 because AI can do the work of those 550. And I would imagine that if that's being applied into very high-skilled roles, very complex roles around, financial risk and this sort of thing, it's probably, you can extrapolate it out across industries. So I think we're going to see a huge influx of technology that will strip away a lot of manual tasks. And I think that will have a very negative impact on things like law firms, for example, where they won't need humans as much as they did. And what we're seeing as a result, and this is happening in tech, a lot of software engineers and that sort of thing are now not necessarily as needed as they used to be if they're not at a certain skill level. The market is centralizing on the top 10, 20% of talent, where they want people that can bring 3 or 4 skills to the table. You have to be very good technically, but you also have to be a very good communicator. And you also have to have some business knowledge. And you also have to have a very proactive, delivery-oriented, problem-solving, solution-providing personality. And if you don't have those things, in my world, you're not going to get a look in. It just is what it is. And then you've got these big companies, monolithic kind of firms that are going to become the homes of everyone else. And that's going to default to lowest common denominator candidate attraction. So I think that will be replicated across industries. I think the cream will rise to the top and everyone else will struggle. And I think that will be most replicated in the recruitment world, where we can do the work. We have, I'm very big on measuring performance and metrics. And I know that the last 3 years with our biggest client, we are the #1 global supplier in technology. We're doing that with 5 people. We're out competing agencies that are 10 times the size of us. And now we're bigger, we're 16 people, but we're not all hands-on. We're bringing in more clients, and then they're now telling us, you're outperforming everyone, because we're using the tooling and everything available to push up great people, and we don't really have room for people that aren't great. And I think in recruitment, that's going to happen, where there's going to be companies that adopt technology in its entirety and default to like spam, just volume, send 10,000 messages, who cares? And they will need to go and work with companies that are pretty rubbish, that can respond. There'll be low skilled, low margin, low fee value recruitment. And it's just body shop type thing. Then I think there's going to be companies that really invest in using this stuff to give them a bigger reach. And I think they can cut costs, they can remove deadwood, they can remove the bloating of headcount, and they can focus on how do we find people that have the raw materials and make them great. And those people will do so much more than what they would have done 10 years ago because they have so much more to utilize. And then I think that will be replicated in how companies work. They'll slim down, they'll be leaner, they'll be more agile. The prioritization will be on the individual and personal relationships, not the brand as a whole. And it'll become about being consultative and really knowing your stuff and adding value to your stakeholders. And then it will also become about being agile and being lean and providing a service, which I'm really excited about because we're set up for that and that's what we're really good at. But I think bigger companies will struggle that have big consultant headcount, lots of average people, billing average numbers where it's just a paycheck.
Yeah.
I fear for those people. I personally don't think they're long for the industry. But I think people that take it seriously and prioritize doing a good job and think about it will really fly. And that's what we've seen. This year's been our best year ever. Our guys are billing more than they've ever billed. They're happier. They're less stressed. They're doing less work.
Yeah.
We're creating opportunity for people, and the feedback from the market has been, unbelievably positive. So it's very exciting, but I don't think it's going to come without casualties.
Well, on that bombshell, Craig Whiting, thank you very much for joining me today. It's been a real pleasure.
Enjoyed it, mate. Thank you.
Thank you so much, mate.